Hey, it's Pete with GCI Turf, and I'm going to talk to you today about Rhizoctonia soloni, which is a disease that is commonly found in tall fescue turf. You know, when you think about it, there's only really two things that would make your yard, your tall fescue yard, turn brown or have brown spots in it. And one is lack of water. That's when it stresses out because it's not hydrated enough and it loses its color. And that's something we can't control. On the flip side of that is brown patch. It's disease, fungus. That is something we can control. And you can see from the yard behind me, this is what you will experience if you don't control brown patch fungus. It can be devastating. Now, will this come back to life in the fall when it cools down? Absolutely it will. But if you're gonna spend money on your yard on a maintenance program, fertility and weed control, why not spend a little bit more and keep it green during the summer? Or at least control what can be controlled. Like I said, we can't control lack of water, but we can control disease. So right now, we're gonna go into an interview with Lee Butler, who is a turfgrass pathologist specialist from NC State University here in North Carolina. If you don't know, NC State is one of the leading turfgrass colleges in the country. They have an entire program that revolves completely around turfgrass. So let's go in here and let's talk to Lee and see what he's got to say about this. Hey Lee, how you doing?
Good, man. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. It has been one more day. I was on the way home and my Jeep ran out of gas about 3 miles from the house. so I...
You know they put fuel gauges in those things, right?
They do put them on there, but I tend to not pay attention to them. So I got out and started walking, and thank goodness this gentleman stopped and picked me up and brought me home. So here we are.
Sweet.
Well, the reason for the call, man, is we manage tall fescue, and we're in the transition zone, and heat can be not a very friendly thing with fescue, and dealing with heat stress, drought stress, and then on the opposite end of that, brown patch fungus. And so I just had a couple of questions I wanted to ask you and kind of clear the air on some things with our clients and help them get a better understanding of what brown patch fungus is.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we start with what causes brown patch fungus in tall fescue.
Yeah, so brown patch is caused by a fungus. It's known as Rhizoctonia soloni. It is a very common fungus. It attacks pretty much every crop known to man in some form or fashion. It's found everywhere. It's a very common question when some folks get a new sod installation and then brown patch shows up a month later. They may think it came from the sod farm or the landscaper brought it. But odds are it was already there in their soil waiting just for the food to come along and eat on it. So very common for folks that have warm season turf like zoysia, Bermuda grass, St. Augustine. It's also the same fungus that causes a very common disease known as large patch.
All right, cool. How common is brown patch in tall fescue, especially in the North Carolina or the Piedmont Triad area?
Yeah, so brown patch is by far the number one disease on tall fescue. It is going to happen every year without fail in North Carolina. We see it from the mountains to once you get to Raleigh, fescue kind of disappears. You start getting into warm season grasses once you get into eastern North Carolina. But the Piedmont and the eastern edge of the mountains, we definitely see that is by far the most common disease.
Cool. All right. Is it possible to manage brown patch in fescue without using a fungicide?
It's essentially impossible to do it without fungicides. However, there are several things you can do to help minimize it. One is when you go to plant your lawn, it does help to do proper soil. Make sure you got the soil prep as good as possible. There are varieties. There are a lot of varieties of tall fescue out there. Some do have improved resistance to brown patch. There is no complete resistance. That doesn't exist, but there are some varieties that are better than others. Usually when you go to buy seed, tall fescue, you'll notice that it is a blend. You'll have 3 or 4 different types of tall fescue in there. And they're usually chosen for their brown patch resistance in the southern part, in the southeastern United States. Another thing to do is making sure you avoid prolonged periods of leaf wetness, especially if you have an irrigation system.
Right.
Where we see people with the most severe brown patch are folks that have irrigation systems and they run them far too frequently.
Yep.
Not only that, they run them at the absolute worst time of the day. So they'll run it when they get home from work, or they'll run it, mid-morning. And all they're doing is extending that wetness of the leaf blade where it naturally gets wet every night from dew set.
Yep.
And by making that leaf blade wet, that's perfect for the fungus. So watering, ideally it's best to water just before sunrise if you have an automatic system. If you're dragging a hose around with a sprinkler, do the best you can. That helps. The other thing is to think about landscape construction and management as far as where you plant trees, shrubs, where you put fences, anywhere we have a landscape wall of trees or bushes that are dense, or if you have a solid privacy fence that blocks airflow,
Right.
you're going to have more severe brown patch because you get that stagnant air in there, and those leaf blades don't dry off as quickly as possible.
Yep.
So those will make it worse. So proper landscape design goes a long way into helping to prevent brown patch. And then finally, just having good surface and soil drainage can help a lot as well. So anywhere we have poor drainage that stays wet longer, you've probably seen a theme here. Fungi love water. So anything you can do to help minimize that will help you a lot. But you can do all those things and make it perfect, and you're still probably likely going to see a little here and there. And it all comes down to your tolerance and what your threshold for damage is. If you want it to be flawless, then you're going to have to be on the fungicide program.
I agree 100%. So can brown patch be confused with any other type of disease that would be in fescue?
Yes, it can. So here in North Carolina, the 3 most common diseases we see is brown patch by far is number 1, as we said earlier. Then you'll see gray leaf spot and pythium blight. Those can be confused for brown patch to the untrained eye. When in doubt, consult with a landscape professional. Most landscape professionals know the difference between those 3. And if they don't, they know how to get in touch with someone who can diagnose it for them, like NC State University, where we can look at it and say, yes, it's this, that, or the other. Because the fungicides you choose to control those can be drastically different. But those are the 3 most common that we see here in our state.
Yeah, and not to mention drastically different, considerably more expensive for the different fungicides used for different diseases.
That is correct.
Cool. I think you touched a little bit on this just now, but what's the best way to manage brown patch in fescue? And please explain some cultural practices that our clients can do to help GCI manage disease in their yard.
Yeah, so we did cover pretty much all of that. But once again, sometimes you don't have, most of the time when you move into a home, you probably don't have the luxury of choosing the variety that was planted, how the soil was prepped, especially in new neighborhoods.
Right.
They completely rake away all the good stuff when they're pushing dirt around. But a lot of homeowners in brand new neighborhoods are left with not a very good soil to grow their turf in. So sometimes you just have no control over that. Good fungicide program does go a long ways in helping proper fertility. Using good fertilizers, getting them out at the right time of the year.
Right.
For tall fescue, it's best the spring and fall is the best time to get nitrogen out. We'll talk about this here in a minute, but it is okay to get a little nitrogen out in the summer months to help with recovery.
Right.
For sure. But I would say the biggest thing is if they have an irrigation system. That's where I see the biggest or most common problem with homeowners that are in control of their irrigation system, and then they're hiring a landscape professional to do their sprays or do the mowing and whatnot. If they can just be more diligent with the watering, not water as much. Believe it or not, Tall Fescue is a very drought-tolerant plant.
It is.
You can actually let it go dormant. It can turn brown in the summer. It will be okay. It will bounce back.
Yep.
But if you are going to water, you have to be diligent. It is kind of an art. Everybody wants to know, I want to set it and forget it. You can't do that. You can't just set the clock on your irrigation system and disappear for the summer. You have to stay on top of it because of slopes, drainage, your soil type's different from other folks. So it is kind of an art. It's where you kind of have to have a green thumb, so to speak. But that's where you can help, landscape professionals like yourself a tremendous amount.
Absolutely. We've actually even put out some videos on how to actually measure the volume of your irrigations to make sure you're getting that 1 to 1.5 inches of water, and how to give it infrequently and not frequently. So I'm
glad you brought that up. Deep and infrequent is the two words they need to remember. In spring and fall, it may be once a week or once every 10 days. But you get into this time of year, you might have to go every 4 or 5 days to limp along.
Correct.
But do not water it every day or every other day. That is just way too much.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to create an anaerobic soil. Believe it or not, the roots need to breathe just as much as the foliage. They have to be able to exchange gases in the soil. And if you keep it wet, it's going to be anaerobic, and that alone will kill turf and cause it to thin out.
Yeah, saturated soil, oxygen just can't be present. So that's good.
Exactly right.
So how do the products used by, say, a company like me that would get commercial labeled fungicides compare to those found at like the big box stores or garden centers? And why do we still only get 28 days control, even though we're using the higher quality products?
Right. So the products that most landscapers use, the average homeowner, you're not going to find these available at big box stores, your Home Depot, Lowe's, garden centers. You got to go to a specialty store to get those products. We actually did a study a couple of years ago where we went and bought all these products that you can find commonly at big box stores, and we compared them to what the commercial folks are using. And the ones that are available, unfortunately, the active ingredients that are in them, we would actually never recommend them for brown patch. They're horrible products for brown patch. And it's actually a shame that that's what's out there. But it is what it is. And we tested those, and the one product that was the best out of those, you're having to apply every 14 days, and you still were only getting 90% control.
Right.
If you were to do the math on that, it cost about 6 times more than the products that professional landscapers are using, like yourself. Products like Heritage, Fame, Insignia, what's known as the Kugels or the Sturbulerns.
Yep.
Those cost, like I said, about 1/6 of the cost, and they last twice as long.
Absolutely.
So after we did that study, we were going around telling folks, you're actually better off hiring a landscape professional and paying them. It's actually cheaper than you trying to do it yourself with the products that are available at these big box stores. And to answer your question about why do they only last 28 days, the fungicides do break down in the grass. Even though the grass does take them up and moves it about the plant, there is something that you do to turf at least weekly, and that's mow. So you're removing that product.
Yep.
They do break down naturally in the soil and in the environment, and they wear off. It's very misleading or confusing that fungicides are called fungicides or that they're cytal, because while they do kill individual fungicide cells when they come into contact with them, they don't kill the entire body of the fungus.
Mm-hmm.
So that fungus is going to resume growth as soon as that fungicide wears off. So you do have to make repeat applications. In the case of Tall Fescue, that may be 3 or 4 times to get through the summer months. So it's actually very good. It's very good that we do have products that last a month.
Yes.
It'd be extremely tough for folks like you to try to get around and get everybody. If you're only getting 7 to 14 days, it would be a nightmare. So we're kind of lucky that they do last as long as they do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. So explain the recent research conducted at NC State where they're looking at the interaction of nitrogen and brown patch. For years, we've always heard never fertilize past a certain date, which I think for me it was always March 15th. Well, I kind of always had my doubts about that because I've always believed a healthy turf going into the hardest part of the year will be able to resist or withstand a lot of these problems we have in the summertime. So explain a little bit about that research you guys did.
Yeah, so you're right. Myself included, when I went through school, in graduate school, we were always told nitrogen makes brown patch worse. So when you go back to the literature, the scientific literature, a lot of that work was done on ryegrass up north. There's a little bit of research you can find on fescue, but most of it's on rye.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to test it on our own selves here just to see, what was going on with that. And we looked at it in two different ways. One way we looked at it was total amounts of nitrogen per year. So we did from no nitrogen up to 6 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year.
Which is a whole lot.
That's a lot. The
Yeah.
typical, usually 3 pounds is enough. Sometimes in high end, you may go up to 4 pounds, but that's about as much as you'll ever see as a total for the year. So we took it up to 6 to kind of go extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And in that particular, we did that for 2 years. And in both years, we never saw an increase in brown patch. Whether, it was no nitrogen or 6 pounds of nitrogen, there was nothing statistically significant there. The one thing I will say is the more that it was fertilized, you get a darker green grass.
Yeah.
And then when you have these brown patches, they do stand out more because of contrast.
Exactly.
But if you were to actually count the incidence or the percentage of brown patch, it is no more than it is if it had, very little nitrogen. So the nitrogen is not making it worse. In that case, we're using urea, which is what a lot of folks use. And then in our other study, we did more of a timing effect, where we're looking at 3 pounds of N per year, but we split it up. So we were doing 3 pounds in the spring, 3 pounds in the fall. We might do a pound in the spring, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring, 1 in the fall. Or we'd break it up and do it monthly, March through November. So we looked at a lot of different combinations, but no more than 3 pounds total.
Right.
Fertilizing straight through the summer. And once again, we went over a 2-year study. We never saw a significant increase in brown patch regardless of which timing we went with. It didn't matter. So we kind of, after doing that for 2 years, we repeated the study, kind of puts that to rest, at least for here in North Carolina, under the situations we looked at it. It definitely did not make it worse. Now, with that being said, we don't recommend anybody go out and put a pound total, June, July, August. But if you want to go out with a 1/4 pound or a 1/2 pound and you're trying to heal an area that's damaged,
Yep.
Have at it, especially if you're using a fungicide. You're not going to have any issues. You're not going to make brown patch worse. Think about it just like yourself. When you're sick, you need to eat, you need nutrients, you got to have food to get back going. The same thing holds true for plants when they've been knocked by a disease due to other stress. You got to give them a little food to
Absolutely.
build new cells and repair themselves.
Yeah, it's basically a just standard protocol for us. If we get a call on fungus and we're going out at a curative rate, we always put a 1/4 to a 1/2 pound in there to help that fescue kind of grow out of the damage, and it works exceptionally well.
Yes. Yep.
So cool. Well, Lee Butler, NC State Turfgrass Pathology Specialist Program. Man, I appreciate the phone call. August 9th is the Turfgrass Trials, where you guys test out the varieties of different fescues, and this will be my first year getting to go. So we have the luxury of getting the custom blended seeds, so I get to actually pick the varieties that we put in our fescue. So I'm going to have my eyes open and my ears open, and I'm going to be listening to everything you guys tell me down there so that we can get the best varieties to provide to our client.
Yeah, so Field Day is an awesome opportunity for anyone that's interested in turf, whether you're a landscaper, homeowner, golf course superintendent, parks and recs, field manager, whatever. There's so much you can see in one day. You get to see all the different cool and warm season turfgrass varieties. As you said, Dr. Grady Miller will have his in-temp plots labeled, so you'll be able to see all the different fescue varieties, zoysia, St. Augustine, Bermuda, whatever. They're all out there. You'll see a lot of disease research in tall fescue, creeping bentgrass, Bermuda grass, putting greens. Our breeder, Dr. Susanna Mila Lewis, will have her stuff on display. It's always neat to see the things that are coming down the line. It'll be weed research, insect research. There's so much to see. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of information. And you get to see it, in person, which, if you're like me, seeing it with your eyes is a whole lot different than reading about it.
Absolutely.
So that's where I think field day is awesome.
All right, man. Well, good deal. I can't wait to meet you in person. And again, I appreciate this phone call. And I guess we'll catch up with you next time.
Yep. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you. So I hope this clears up a lot of questions that a lot of folks have about brown patch fungus. What it is, what causes it, what you can do about it, is it preventable, treatable. I want you to check this yard out. We got a call from this client around 1st of June. Historically, this yard gets brown patch in it every year. We applied a curative fungicide, and you just look for yourself and you see the results. This is about 10 days later. So we want to prevent the fungus by applying preventative fungicide. So if you'd like this done, please contact us. Oh, snap. Freaking run out of gas in the Jeep. Can you believe that, dude? Nobody will stop and pick me up. I mean, I know I ain't the best looking thing in the world, but I ain't bad looking. I ain't terrible. They won't come get me. They won't nobody stop. Watch this right here. See if this guy stop. Nope. Keep right on going. Hey, look at that. They did stop. Hang on. Are they gonna stop? That guy didn't stop. Hopefully it's somebody I know. Oh, Pete's gonna cause a wreck. Hey man.